It was supposed to be a new beginning, a quiet suburban neighborhood, wide sidewalks, trimmed hedges, and the promise of safety. But for 16-year-old Malik Johnson, moving here felt like stepping into a war zone where the enemy didn't wear a uniform but hid behind polite smiles and locked doors. Malik's family had dreamed of better. His mother called it a chance to breathe, but within days of unpacking, they were met with cold stares, slammed doors, and whispers that stopped when they walked by. The worst of it came from Blake Harwood, the charming, golden-haired son of the town sheriff. On the surface, Blake was all-American perfection, but to Malik he was a daily nightmare, orchestrating cruel jokes, planting rumors, and making sure no one dared befriend the new black kid on the block. So Malik tried to stay invisible, keep his head down, survive, until one afternoon changed everything. As he was walking home with a few friends, Malik noticed old Mrs. Whitaker, a frail woman from 2 doors down, struggling on her porch, jabbing at a flickering light with her cane, despite his friends' warnings. "Man, don't get involved. These people don't want our help." Malik stepped up, because that's what his father taught him. You help people, even when they don't help you back. The next morning, she reported her jewelry missing. And guess who the police questioned? No. His mother's face fell in slow motion as the deputy pulled up to their house. His father stood tall, proud, but helpless. The whispers turned into accusations. Overnight, Malik became the neighborhood thief, the cautionary tale, the reason they had locks on their gates. But behind the scenes, the truth was even uglier. Hidden in shadows, someone else was laughing, someone who wanted the Johnson family gone, someone who had everything to lose if the truth came out. And when Malik stumbled upon that truth in a dark alley, when he saw with his own eyes who really stole the jewelry, it shattered everything he thought he knew about justice, loyalty, and survival. But here's the real question. When the entire neighborhood turns against you, will the truth even matter? That question haunted Malik like a shadow, clinging to every breath he took. His family's name was suddenly smeared across whispers, church pews, and HOA meetings. Neighbors who once offered a distant wave now looked through them like they didn't exist. The woman at the corner bakery refused to make eye contact. A child Malik had helped find his lost puppy just a week earlier now crossed the street when he saw him coming. The weight of it all pressed against Malik's chest every morning. But it wasn't just the looks or the silence. It was the isolation. At school, lockers slammed louder when he walked by. The lunchroom grew colder. Teachers grew suspicious. Blake Harwood made sure of that, spreading just enough poison to make people squint when Malik entered a room. He probably thought he could get away with it, Blake would mutter under his breath in class, just loud enough, typical. But Malik wasn't raised to back down from lies. So when he walked home that Friday afternoon and heard the muffled sound of laughter echoing from the alley behind Whitaker's grocery, he followed it. Something in his gut told him not to, but curiosity, pain, and a simmering sense of injustice led his feet forward. There, behind a rusty dumpster beneath the buzzing light of a flickering lamp, stood Blake Harwood, and in his palm, twirling like a toy, was Mrs. Whitaker's diamond pendant, the one Malik had been accused of stealing. He tossed it into the air with a cocky grin, catching it with flair as 2 of his friends chuckled nervously. "I can't believe they actually bought it," Blake smirked. One look at him and they all nodded. "Easy, just like my dad said." Malik froze. For a moment he forgot to breathe. The anger didn't come first. It was heartbreak, a silent kind of ache that settled deep in his bones. Because now he knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a setup. A deliberate plan to ruin his family's chance at peace, and Blake, the sheriff's son, had orchestrated it with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. When Malik stepped into the light, Blake's smile dropped. "What the hell are you doing here?" Blake barked, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. "I should ask you that," Malik replied, his voice low, steady, dangerous. "Planning your next lie?" Blake lunged, but he was sloppy. Malik's fist connected before he could blink. The pendant flew from his hand, hitting the pavement with a sharp clink. Blake's friends scattered like roaches, their loyalty dissolving in the face of real consequences. The sounds of the fight echoed down the alley, grunts, scuffles, the crunch of gravel. Then came the sirens. Red and blue lights painted the walls, turning the night into a blur of flashing judgment. Sheriff Harwood arrived seconds later, his eyes wild with fury, when he saw his son on the ground and Malik standing above him, everything ball over. "You're done," he growled. "You just ruined your life, boy." He reached for his cuffs. But before Malik could speak, a soft but shaking voice cut through the chaos. "Wait," someone cried. Everyone turned. Out of the darkness stepped Ryan, the quietest of Blake's friends, pale, thin, barely taller than Malik's shoulder. His voice cracked with fear, but he spoke anyway. "It wasn't Malik," Ryan said. "It was Blake. He did it. He told us if we didn't lie, he'd make our lives hell too." A heavy silence dropped over the alley. For the first time in days, Malik felt the tiniest crack in the wall that had closed in around him. But was it enough to break through it? Malik stood frozen in that moment, his heart pounding louder than the sirens still wailing in the background. Sheriff Harwood's eyes narrowed as Ryan's trembling voice echoed through the alley, cracking the illusion his family had built around Blake. The air felt thick with tension, like the whole town had been holding its breath. Malik's parents arrived seconds later, his mother in slippers, his father with grease-stained hands from the garage. They saw their son, surrounded by flashing lights, bruised and breathing hard. Malik's mother stumbled forward, reaching for her son like he might disappear if she blinked too long. "Please," she begged, turning to the officers, "just listen to him." Malik raised his voice, not shouting, but strong, like someone who had nothing left to lose but still refused to back down. "Blake stole the jewelry. I saw him with it. I heard him brag about framing me, because I'm black, because he wanted us gone." Sheriff Harwood barked out a bitter laugh. "He's lying. You assaulted my son. That's a felony." But then Ryan stepped forward again, more confident this time. "It's true, all of it. Blake told us to lie. He said no one would believe Malik anyway. He looked at the other boys who'd followed Blake's orders. We were scared." One by one, two more boys stepped out of the shadows. Noah and Grant. Faces pale, eyes downcast. They nodded. "I didn't know how far it would go," Grant mumbled. "I thought it was just a joke." A joke. That word hit Malik harder than Blake's fist ever could. His family's suffering had been entertainment for these kids, their hope crushed because someone thought it would be funny. An officer leaned over and carefully picked up the pendant from the ground, slipping it into an evidence bag. "We'll run fingerprint analysis," he said quietly, almost apologetically, as if trying to undo weeks of damage in a single sentence. But Malik wasn't done. He turned to the gathering crowd, neighbors who had come out of their homes, some still holding coffee mugs, others in robes and sandals, the same neighbors who had looked away when his family was shamed, the same ones who never spoke up. "My dad lost his job because of this," Malik said, voice cracking now with emotion. "My mum stopped going outside. My little sister asks every day why no one smiles at us anymore." There was silence, not defensiveness, not outrage, just shame. And then another voice cut through. "I'm sorry." Mrs. Whitaker stood at the edge of the alley, leaning on her cane, her wrinkled face pale and stricken. "I'm sorry, I assumed," she said. "I thought I knew who you were, based on nothing. I never even thanked you for helping me that day." She looked at Malik's mother, then his father. "I let my fear become my truth." Four neighbors shifted awkwardly. A few lowered their eyes. The illusion was unraveling. Then came the final blow. Another officer approached, holding the results of the fingerprint scan from the lab's quick test. "No prints from Malik," he announced. "Only Blake's, multiple on every item." Sheriff Harwood opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at his son, still on the ground, defeated, not by fists, but by his own cowardice. Everything fell apart in that moment. Malik should have felt triumphant, but all he felt was tired. Tired of fighting to be seen, tired of being judged before he ever had a chance. And yet somehow in that exhaustion he stood a little taller, because he hadn't just defended his name. He had made them look, he had made them listen. But what would they do with the truth now that they finally saw it? The answer came not in applause, not in cheers, but in silence. A heavy, aching silence as the neighbors looked at one another, realizing they hadn't just misjudged Malik Johnson, they had helped destroy him. Every lie they repeated, every glance they avoided, every time they chose to say nothing, it all came crashing down with the weight of the truth. Sheriff Harwood stood, stone still, jaw clenched, his world unraveling. The badge on his chest didn't look like a symbol of authority anymore. It looked like a stain. He didn't reach for his son. He didn't defend him. Instead, for the first time, he looked ashamed, not just of Blake, but of himself. Then came the fallout. Malik's father was reinstated at work within 48 hours. The garage where he'd been fired, the one owned by one of the neighbors who had pushed the theft rumor, issued a public apology. the school held an emergency assembly where Malik's name was cleared, and his principal, red-faced and remorseful, spoke to the student body about racial bias and accountability. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Even the local news picked up the story. The headline read, "Teen falsely accused. Truth shakes suburban community." Cameras rolled, reporters hovered outside homes, but the real story wasn't just about justice. It was about what came next. Malik didn't want revenge. What he wanted was to live, to laugh again, to walk without suspicion. And slowly, painfully, the neighborhood began to change. Mrs. Whitaker, the woman who had unknowingly started the storm, showed up at the Johnsons' doorstep one morning with a freshly baked lemon pie. Her hands trembled as she offered it. "This doesn't fix anything," she said, "but it's a start." Malik's mother accepted it with a soft smile. A real start would be sharing it together. They did, at that very table. Word spread. Soon, the family was invited to the next community event, something they'd never been asked to before. Malik's sister was enrolled in a dance program, fully sponsored. His father began mentoring at the local youth center. It wasn't charity, it was reparation. Quiet gestures, loud efforts, open eyes. But not everyone changed. Blake Harwood was expelled. Rumors swirled about a boarding school across the state, but nothing was confirmed. Sheriff Harwood, meanwhile, was quietly dismissed from his post. No press conference, no ceremony, just an empty office and a town council that no longer protected one of its own. Some residents protested the decision, called it too harsh, but most stayed quiet. Deep down, they knew what had happened wasn't a mistake. It had been a choice to look the other way. And Malik? He didn't gloat. He didn't post angry videos or lash out. He carried the victory not like a trophy, but like a scar. He stood taller, yes, but the pain still lingered. The betrayal of being falsely accused, the humiliation of seeing his family suffer, the rage of knowing how easily the world had been willing to condemn him just for existing. But then, one Saturday morning, as Malik walked past the school gym, he saw something that caught him off guard. A group of younger kids, black, white, brown, were huddled around a poster on the wall. "Who's that?" one of them asked. "That's Malik Johnson," another replied. "He's the one who stood up, the one who told the truth." Malik didn't stop walking, but for the first time in weeks he smiled. Because maybe, just maybe, the truth did matter. But would the next generation remember it? That question lingered in Malik's mind like morning fog, soft but hard to shake. He had lived through fire and come out standing, but the scars didn't fade overnight. Some nights he still woke in a cold sweat, haunted by flashing red lights and clenched fists. Other times, he'd pass a neighbor on the street and instinctively brace for a look of judgment, only to be met with a nod of respect instead. Yet, even in those uncertain moments, something had shifted. 1 month after Blake's confession, the school district asked Malik to speak at their annual Unity Forum, an event previously reserved for administrators and guest professionals. Malik, just 16, stood on stage in front of hundreds. Students, teachers, parents, even city officials. He didn't prepare a speech, he told the truth. "I didn't ask to be brave," he began. "I was just trying to live. But when your name is dragged through the dirt, when your family becomes a target, you learn quickly. Either you speak up or you disappear." The room was silent. No movement, no coughs, just listening. "But here's the thing," Malik continued, his voice steady. "My story isn't rare. It's just one that happened to be caught. There are kids like me in every hallway, every town, judged before they say a word. And the worst part is not just what's done to us, it's what you all let happen." That line hit like a thunderclap. A few adults shifted in their seats, some lowered their eyes. Malik saw one teacher, Mr. Daly, who'd once asked if Malik was in the right class, wipe his glasses and stare into his lap. But Malik wasn't there to shame them, he was there to wake them. He ended with a challenge: "Don't let the next kid go through what I did, not on your watch." The auditorium erupted in applause. Some stood, some wept, but no one forgot. And yet the biggest surprise was still to come. The following week, a letter arrived at Malik's home. It was handwritten, its return address marked from several counties away. Inside was a short message. "I watched you on TV. I used to believe people like you didn't belong in neighborhoods like ours. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Thank you for making me see it." It wasn't signed. That night, Malik sat on his porch with his father, the stars bright above them. He handed him the letter. His dad read it slowly, then leaned back, silent for a while. "You know," he finally said, "when we moved here, I thought the fight would be about fitting in. But you didn't just fit in, son. You changed the shape of the place." Then something happened that no one saw coming. But the mayor of the city, a woman known for steering clear of controversy, publicly announced a new program, the Malik Johnson Initiative, a citywide effort focused on racial bias education in schools, workplace equity, and community healing events. Malik's name was now tied to reform, to hope, to legacy. Some critics called it performative, others called it overdue. Malik called it a beginning, because justice isn't just about proving innocence. It's about creating a world where innocence isn't questioned because of skin color in the first place. So when the next generation asks what happened here, the answer won't be silence or shame. The boys stood up, the truth came out, and a community chose to change. But deep down, Malik still wondered, will it last? Or would the cycle simply wait for the next name, the next face, the next fight? Malik didn't know the answer, not right away. The applause faded, the headlines quieted, life moved on the way it always does. But beneath the routine of school bells and bus rides, Malik felt something shifting, not loudly but quietly, like roots pushing through earth. He saw it in the way his classmates started sitting beside him instead of across the room, in the way teachers no longer flinched when he raised his hand, even in the way the security guard at the corner store gave him a nod now instead of a second glance. Healing, it turns out, didn't come all at once. It came in fragments, tiny, beautiful ones. One afternoon, as Malik was packing up after school, the principal stopped by his locker. "You got a minute?" she asked. "I'd like you to help us train next year's peer leaders. We need voices like yours." Malik hesitated. "Voices like mine?" He smiles, voices that speak out, voices that people now trust. That night, Malik sat at the kitchen table with his little sister Mia helping her with a poster for her school project. It was titled, "Heroes in Our Community." At first he assumed she'd chosen someone like a firefighter or a doctor, but when he looked closer, his heart caught in his throat. In the center was a drawing of Malik, standing tall, arms crossed, surrounded by people of every color, all smiling. "I picked you," Mia said matter-of-factly, "because you didn't let them scare you." Malik blinked fast, pretending something was in his eye, but deep down something softened, something that fear and anger had built walls around for far too long. 2 weeks later, an unexpected letter arrived. This one bore the seal of the State Education Department. Malik had been awarded a Youth Justice Fellowship, one that came with a scholarship, travel to speak at conferences, and the chance to help shape school equity policies. He stared at the letter, stunned, not because he didn't feel worthy, but because, for the first time, someone else did too. Then came the twist no one expected. On Sunday morning, as his family got ready for church, a car pulled up outside their house. A woman stepped out, elegantly dressed, shoulders stiff. It was Blake Harwood's mother. Malik's parents froze. Malik clutched her brother's hand. The woman approached with visible effort, her eyes tired but focused. She held out an envelope with both hands. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly, "but I need you to know not all of us supported what happened. I've left Blake's father. I'm moving, and I'm starting over too." Inside the envelope was a letter of confession, one she had written and sent to the town council, detailing what she had witnessed at home, how her silence had contributed, and her refusal to remain complicit any longer. Malik looked at her, not with bitterness, but with something more powerful. Understanding. Sometimes the people who watched harm unfold suffer in silence too, and sometimes the only way forward is together. As spring rolled in, the Johnsons planted a garden in their front yard. Bright tulips, strong oaks, sunflowers stretching toward the sky. Neighbors came by to help, children ran through the grass, and on a small wooden sign at the edge of the lawn, Malik carved the words, "Truth took root here." And just like that, what started as a battle became a beginning. Because when one boy dares to speak, a whole town can learn to listen. And sometimes, against all odds, change does last. But not because it happens on its own. It lasts because someone like Malik stood when it was easier to stay silent, because he chose integrity over anger and courage over comfort. It lasts because a few people his parents, his sister, a scared friend named Ryan, refused to let the truth be buried. And it lasts because eventually others followed. Some stumbled, some hesitated, but they followed. The town didn't become perfect. No place ever does. Prejudice doesn't vanish with one apology. Fear doesn't fade off to one assembly. But the neighborhood that once turned its back on a boy now carries his name on the walls of their community center, in the policies of their schools, and in the stories they tell their children. Malik never asked to be a hero. He only wanted to live with dignity. And through his pain, he gave others permission to open their eyes and their hearts. This story isn't just about one boy in one town. It's about all the Malik Johnsons out there, boys and girls, men and women, who face judgment not for what they've done, but for who they are. It's about what happens when communities ignore injustice and what can happen when they choose to confront it. So to everyone watching, we ask you, what would you do if it were your neighbor, your classmate, your child? Would you look the other way? Or would you speak up? We can't rewrite the past, but we can choose the present. We can listen more, love louder. And when we see wrong, we can stand beside the one who dares to speak the truth. Because sometimes the smallest act of courage, like helping an elderly woman with a broken light, even when the world warns you not to, can set a ripple in motion that changes everything. Let Malik's story be that ripple. Let it remind us that every voice matters, that silence can be violence, that justice isn't a moment, it's a movement. And if you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or misjudged, know this. You are not alone. There is strength in your voice and power in your presence. Keep standing, keep speaking, and never let anyone define your worth by the color of your skin or the lies they tell to silence you. Thank you for walking this journey with us. If this story moved you even a little, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's spread this message as far as it can go, because someone out there needs to hear it, and someone out there is Malik Johnson. And they're waiting for the world to finally listen. Together, we can make sure they're heard.